Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about The Boys, Season 4, Episode 3. It's called We'll Keep the Red Flag Flying Here. So spoilers for the episode, as always. And I thought this was mostly another pretty great episode. I think there's one or two character stories that aren't clicking with me as much as the rest of the show. I've kind of mentioned Huey, although I think Huey's elevated a little bit this episode, and I thought the scene with the mum was a bit better, and then for the most part he's just doing other stuff with the other characters this episode. It was actually Frenchie's story that was kind of bringing me down this episode. I think the more we get into Frenchie's story, it's kind of feeling a little bit kind of like we're doing the same thing we've more or less done with them before. It's he's literally relapsing, right? That's brought up in this episode, is that the group therapy was working, the counselling was working, he was getting over his addictions, but he's feeling guilty about his past again, and he's popping pills again, and it just kind of feels like we're kind of covering some similar ground. I think the moment where you hallucinate, well, it's funny seeing the bubbles and the other things he was seeing come out of the bodies that Kimiko was beating up. It was still like the moment the Russian lady popped up and started taunting him, I'm like, okay, like I get it, but I feel like I just, we've done this already, and it was definitely the part of the episode that I liked the least, for sure. But the rest of the episode, I liked a lot of what it did. I think the Butcher stuff is proving to be very compelling this season. And this is the second time now in 3 episodes that Butcher has almost done something morally questionable that he would have absolutely done in past seasons and chose not to do it. In the first episode, it was, of course, betraying Huey's trust. In this episode, it's drugging Ryan, right? He convinces Ryan to come to him, which actually, we have to talk about how he does this, right? So he's working with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, Kessler, who's given him something to knock out Ryan, and their plan is to like kidnap him and like contain him to turn him to like military style make him turn on Homelander, which seems a bit aggressive and a bit inhumane of a way to do it. But Homelander makes these cookies and all that. But the way he contacts them is really fun, because what he does is he contacts Ryan in a video game, a fighting video game, which is clearly based on Mortal Kombat. And it's all the characters, all the supers from the 7, past and present. And it's Lamplighter versus Crimson Red. Was that her name from last season? I may be not remembering the names completely accurately. This was just a funny idea. It was weird that the mouths were moving in sync with what they were saying. That was a bit odd. That almost felt like either whoever wrote that part had never played a video game before and thought that when you talked, the characters would talk like you were the ones talking through them, or they just thought it would be funny to have them actually mouth the words with the voice chat. But either way, it has a Mortal Kombat style fatality, but with that boy's twist that makes it kind of aggressively erotic, where where Lamplighter shoves his big staff up what's her face's ass, and it pops out of her eyeball, and it's really grotesque in a video game way. I thought that was funny. I had a good chuckle at that. Especially since it's not actually that far removed from what Mortal Kombat actually does. I mean, it's a little bit more sexual, perhaps, than Mortal Kombat is, but it's not that far removed from the fatalities in that game. So, I thought that was a bit funny. Especially since that game has had like DC Comics versions where you've played as some of the superheroes. Admittedly, they didn't have fatalities, but still. In fact, did we see this game before? I want to say... No, we saw them watching movies. I was trying to think, there was a scene with Lamplighter where he was watching, I think, like a porn parody. Yeah, I was thinking maybe there was a scene where he was playing this video game then, but I think it was new. If we have seen this before, we definitely didn't see this specific thing in the game. If we have seen the game before, they'll let me know in the comments, but I don't remember seeing it before. Although I'm second guessing myself now that I'm saying that. But there's an emotional scene with Billy and Ryan. In fact, even before we get to the emotional part, Ryan reluctantly comes. Butcher offers him one of these cookies that's laced. Ryan turns it down for now, and he's like, okay, maybe later. But Ryan asks him if he's scared of dying. And Butcher, kind of shrugs it off, even though he had the ear bleed. He just kind of goes, no, I'm all right, mate. He gets cocky. He does the Butcher thing. He covers up. We've been seeing him do it constantly since the start of the show. And Ryan calls him out and says, "You're lying. I can tell when you're lying. I know what this is like." And he's about to leave, but Butcher kind of entices him in with foosball of all things. And when we come back to them and they're playing the game together, Ryan points out that he's enjoying this because Butcher's not letting him win. Right? Because everyone at the tower just walks on eggshells and always is nice to him. The way Homelander's trained them to be around him, that's how Ryan's also kind of treated by everyone at Vought. So he appreciates that, and that's a form of honesty. And I was even thinking when Butcher was lying to him before, I was actually kind of in my head screaming at him, like, no, Homelander is refusing like to be a human being with him. You showing some honesty and being a real person to Ryan might be the thing that sways him. And that's the real heart of all this, I think, is that you've got Jeffrey Dean Morgan whisper in his ear. I should say Kessler. Kessler's whispering in his ear. And he's like, no, either we have to turn them or find a way of killing them. This is the position we're in. This is something that comes up later when he finds out Butcher's chickened out of doing the plan. And I think what's so beautiful about this, and this comes back to the heart of this show, where it's always had this heart at the center of it, even below all the cynicism and all the satire and all the other things it's doing, is that the thing that's going to turn Ryan is what Butcher's effectively already started doing. It's being open with them, it's being honest, it's being more of that father figure that he resisted being. And in this scene, the first thing that kind of opens up and kind of forms a dialogue, really, is that Butcher mentions his brother, and Ryan says, "Who's that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's my brother. He passed away." And it kind of like opens the door a little bit, because especially since a lot of Butcher's motivation in the past of this show, the reason why he was so reluctant to like care about Huey and then care about Ryan is because he has felt some level of guilt and responsibility for his brother's death, right? That's been a big part of Butcher's character this entire show. That's why he's so closed off, in part. I mean, largely it's his father, of course, but like that's like one of the main things he feels guilty about. That's his big failure, is that he wasn't there for his brother. And it's why he's scared of being a father, because he's scared of being like his dad was, so he pushes people away, right? This is something we talked about a lot last season. So to have him admit who his brother is, and then choose, right? And I think he might even look at the cookies again, or maybe it's when Ryan's opening up, because Ryan starts talking about the save from last episode, and Butcher's act. He's like, "Oh, you're like a hero now. You did this," and Ryan opens up and confesses about accidentally killing the guy. Right? He doesn't say those words, but he says he hurt someone. Butcher asks, "Is he going to be okay?" And Ryan just gives him a look. So he says it without saying it. And I think, again, this is a key moment where Ryan, that bond with Butcher is going to grow, because Butcher's reaction is not like Homelander's. And Ryan tells him what Homelander said, that he shouldn't care. But Butcher does open up more. He even brings up like how he said a lot of mean things to him last season, and that it's because he's bad and he pushes people away. I mean, I can't remember the exact wording that he used here, but he kind of is honest about it. And it feels like he's being honest. It feels like he's actually just being genuine and vulnerable. And it all builds up to him finally saying, "Hey, remember earlier when you asked if I was scared of dying? Yeah, I'm terrified. And I'm terrified that I've lived and accomplished nothing. You know, I lost my brother, I lost your mom, and the scariest thing of all is that I might not even be able to, like, you know, leave you in a good place. That I might have failed to help you, I might have pushed you away. If I've not even been able to help the one part of my dead wife that's still alive, I'm terrified of that." And it's a genuine, open, honest moment. And I was actually surprised how effective this was. I thought the performance was good. I thought the writing hit me well enough here, because it is interesting to see Butcher. It's exciting to see him actually open up in this way with the person that he should open up with. Because, you know, to take this all back to the genesis, not the genesis of even this show, the genesis of the entire concept of freaking Superman, right? Part of the reason what makes Superman work and makes him endearing is that he was taught right from wrong with two loving, caring, kind parents. And that's why he is the good person that he is. And this idea that in this super cynical world of the boys, that we have to go through everything we have been through in the hopes that Butcher, the most like hurt by bad parenting maybe we have in the show. I mean, maybe that's not true. A lot of people in this show have had really bad parents. There's been a wide spectrum of bad parents in this show. But the idea that he's finally at a place where maybe, even without intending to or realizing that he's going to do it, is going to offer some of those lessons. And even if he's not going to give perfect advice, the idea that he's just kind of open and honest about what scares him, when Homelander is never open or honest about what scares him, he can't admit it to himself. We see him talking in the mirror. He can't even be honest with himself about how he feels about things. You know, it takes him off guard when Sage points out that he's acting a certain way, that he is petty. And there's like a funny moment with that, of course, in this episode, but that's the sort of thing that will ultimately have Butcher appeal more to Ryan than Homelander, aside from the fact that Homelander also scares the shit out of him at the end of the episode when he throws something because he's angry and he's mad that he's lying to him, and Homelander's yelling, "Oh, am I not good enough for you?" And it sounds like a manipulative parent who's not good, who is trying to guilt their child into being the way they want them to behave. You know, not be a good person, but be the way they want them to be. If anything, if I was to compare it to anything, I'd say it's, if anything, most comparable to something like Starlight's mom and how she treated her. I'm not saying it's 1-to-1, but if I'm thinking about like the idea that he's projecting all these future goals onto Ryan and saying, you're going to be this because this is what I want to be forever. Starlight's mom wanted her to be a certain way because she had all these ideas of fame or whatever. You know, that they're living vicariously through your kid. With Homelander, it's more of a continuing a legacy because he's done whatever he's wanted. But yeah, I thought that stuff. I thought that scene with Butcher and Ryan was great. I thought it really anchored like what we're doing. You know, Ryan was a very interesting concept to bring into the show, especially when we got to the end of season 2, and it was like, oh shit, Butcher has to actually make the choice to try and protect him, right? And we had that great moment at the end of season 2 where he kind of pushes Ryan behind him so that he can protect him from Homelander, even though he can't physically protect him from Homelander, but it was a symbolic gesture. And now we're here at this point where he is actually forming a real bond with Ryan, and Ryan is becoming more of a fleshed out character. I want to say I'm very impressed so far this season that the Ryan plots have been very good, and they're adding a lot to the show, and it's a new element to the show. I mean, it's not completely new. They've been building up Ryan, but I do remember thinking that last season, like, you know, I wasn't always that excited for Ryan himself. You know, I liked what he served in terms of Butcher's story or Homelander's story, but I feel like here, him actually voicing these concerns and struggling with the idea that Homelander wants him not to care about human life, and reaching out to Butcher and actually kind of like responding to Butcher when Butcher is honest with him. I think those elements are actually really good, and Ryan's becoming more of a character in his own right. But in many ways, he is this you know, the tug of war at the heart of the show. Ryan's right there in the center of it. So thought that was really good stuff. The other things with Homelander, him very angry at the start and wanting to melt all the Starlighter supporters in the crowd was funny because it is the way he is. But he introduces Sage and Firecracker as the new members of the Seven, which was interesting because that this comes up kind of, you know, we didn't know Firecracker was going to be added to the Seven. And Homelander's not even sure about it either. When he hears Firecracker spouting all of her conspiracy theories, she starts talking about vaccines and everything else. He turns to Sage and is like, "Really? Her? Like, why her?" And Sage is like, "Because she can take down Starlight. She's going to rile them up even more, and that's what we want to do." So that's kind of her goal. Obviously, we learn a bit more about Starlight and Firecracker's past, because Starlight gets really pissed. In fact, especially when Firecracker, when she's been interviewed on the news, says something to the effect of, it's amazing that I'm a woman who got into the tower without having to blow someone to get here. And the camera tracking in Starlight's face, because it's a really shitty thing to say. Starlight comes to confront her, purely just to say, why do you hate me so much? Why are you doing this? Why do you have this vendetta where you're trying to run my image into the ground? And it turns out Firecracker's got a vendetta because they knew each other in their past. She used to go by Sparkler, and Starlight spread a rumor about her having a gangbang with the judges, notably when she was 13 years old. They were both about that age. But that rumor never left her, and she eventually had to drop out, and that rumor followed her. There was a lot of shame attached to it. I'm trying to remember if in the flashbacks we got a Starlight when she was in the that age in the pageants. If we saw Sparkler, I can't remember if we did. This is sort of digging deep into the older episodes of the show if we actually saw any hints of her. If so, that'd have been a great tease or setup for this character showing up now. But even if not, it doesn't matter because I think this is interesting because it's like, okay, she actually does, while it may be a little petty that she's still harboring this grudge, it probably did affect her life quite a bit, and it makes sense that she hates her so much and she wants to expose Starlight for the fraud that she is, even though we all see Starlight as being someone who's speaking from the heart because she cares about these things, and it's easy for us to see it that way because we've seen her progression since episode 1, and we've kind of always sympathized with Starlight, and it's like, you know, when she, especially when Starlight says, oh, you know, my mother taught me to be ruthless, that also kind of fits into the Homelander and Ryan stuff, right? This idea that for a little while, just like Ryan's kind of doing whatever Homelander says right now, like at the start of the episode when Homelander whispers to his ear, smile right now in a really stern way or you're in trouble. So Ryan starts smiling. That was Starlight and her mum, right? Like this whole you have to be ruthless, you have to be this, you have to be that. Like I'm sure if we go back and watch those flashback scenes when we saw like the kid version in her, you know, remember she was like doing the crossing the fingers behind her back or biting her, or not even crossing, sorry, she was digging her nails into her hands to contain her rage, and that was something she kind of brought back when she was having to pretend to be in the 7 with Homelander last season. Is very similar in this idea that she was able to move on from that, and what's the sad irony of this is that this vendetta that Firecracker has against her is something that dates from that time, and you could almost see Ryan making an enemy like that if he does something that Homelander tells him to do that really messes with someone's life. In fact, arguably the family of the stuntman that he killed. What if that stuntman's got a son about his age that now has a vendetta? It reminds me of the open of Kill Bill when Beatrice comes and gets her revenge, and we're kind of rooting for her because she's the main character, and we learn a lot of her reasons why she's doing this. But her first like opponent, Copperhead, I want to say is that first character she goes after. But she sees her daughter and kneels down and says, hey, your mum was bad and she had it coming, but I understand if one day when you're grown up, if you want to hunt me down and take out vengeance of your own, I'll be waiting for you. It almost kind of reminds me of that a little bit, where maybe this stuntman had family that is one day going to come after Ryan, and Ryan may end up being literally this world's Superman who takes down Homelander, but there's going to be that family who's always going to resent him, and that's something that maybe we have to deal with. Obviously, regret and guilt's a big part of this show. All the characters are going through some form of that in one way or another. But it just is something that was I was thinking of there as we were talking about Starlight's past. This was interesting because it wasn't something that Annie really had a real comeback for. Like obviously she is doing good. She she says she believes in what she's doing. She's not just posing, and we believe that certainly. But she does wrestle with the idea afterwards that it's becoming tough because before she had an easy time just kind of blaming her mother's decisions for a lot of bad stuff that happened, and then blaming Vought and Homelander for a lot of decisions that were made when she was at the in the 7. Now she's actually having to sort of make her own decisions completely and then suffer the ramifications of those decisions and sort of own up to them completely on her own. She can't have a scapegoat anymore, and she's kind of struggling to deal with that a little bit. So the idea that she's becoming more of a public image again, and she said Starlight's back on TV and all that, all very interesting to sort of pair that with her again having this thing from the past. So very, very curious about that. Anything else with, well, yeah, we got all the stuff at the ice rink. We'll get to that in a minute. I feel like I always leave kind of the big main plot mission to last for whatever reason. I'll talk about the character stuff first. Sage. Obviously, Sage is there. She basically takes over Ashley's duties. Ashley's just a figurehead now. And I forgot about this little running joke, but Ashley and the news guy are in a sort of dominatrix relationship. I won't talk about it much because I'm sure I talked about it the first time they revealed it, but obviously, given the way Ashley's treated, you can see the irony and all that. But she's going to quit until she, of course, sees what Homelander does to the poor woman who happened to contact Starlight for a reason. Or even Starlight contacted her, but they're looking for a leak. Sage is smart enough to realize that someone must have leaked the footage that exonerated the 2 scapegoats last episode. So A-Train's sweating a little bit. They think it's Deep's fault because he runs that department, so they take that department away from him. And they interview this woman, and this was the woman who had the what's the bar? I don't know, some kind of Nutri-Grain protein bar or something. Whatever it was. But yeah, I remember that being a joke from the previous seasons. And they're interviewing her, and Sage is like, you don't have to be scared. If you just admit whatever's happened, like, you'll be fine. And they make Homelander swear twice. Like, Sage doesn't even believe him. And so he swears again on his son's life, which he breaks. And we all knew he was going to break it. We knew he was going to kill her, right? But this was hilarious because of when he kills her. She doesn't even get to finish, like, her first sentence. She just admits that Starlight contacted her, and before she even has a chance to say what it was for, boom, heat vision, lasers, hole through the head, everyone's in shock. Well, Sage is not in shock, she's just annoyed. Because Sage, quite rightly, is like, I feel like the rest of that sentence might have been useful. And Homelander takes it, no, she confessed. She started confessing, done deal, leak plugged. And I'm like, okay, that's good for A-Train, because they're not looking for a leak. But had she finished talking, Sage might have been aware that she was telling the truth about whatever she was going to say, because obviously she had nothing to do with the leak, right? I don't think she did, unless she gave it to A-Train, but I don't think so. I think it was an innocent conversation she had with Starlight, and now she's dead, because Homelander, as he puts it, maybe is that petty. But, yeah, entertaining. But the big scene with Sage, though, is later on in the episode. The Deep comes in to argue with her because he wanted to stay in that department, and he blames her for getting him booted off of it. So he comes in, and it's almost like he's trying to do what he did with Ashley last episode, where he's like, hey, I'm important around here, you can't do that to me. And what happens is that she's lying there eating like junk food, like takeout food, right? And I was kind of thinking, oh, this is like, I can see what they're doing here, this idea that she's super intelligent, so you would think, oh, she'll eat really posh, smart food. But no, she's not. She's eating, happy junk food, because it's like, it's the same thing you hear about like really fancy chefs who work in restaurants. They'll just pick up fast food on the way home because the last thing they want to do is cook for themselves, kind of thing. It's not quite that, but I like the kind of the dual kind of like the contradiction there. But the end of this scene, I actually didn't quite get it first. I actually Googled what people interpreted this scene as, because obviously we'll get to the main part of it, but at the end of the scene, there's like a fire poker or something that's got blood on it, and maybe a bit of gunk, and I was like, what is this? I didn't get it. I was like, what is this? I kept thinking, oh, was this in a previous scene, and it's like letting us know that she stabbed someone or something? However, upon seeing what other people are saying, I actually really like what it is. The implication here is that she gave herself a lobotomy, and does this presumably often, because it's the only way she can make herself dumber for a little while. So presumably her brain will go back to normal, she'll become super smart again. And this makes sense given the context of the scene, because she basically turns to Deep and says, do you want some of this food? And then says, do you want to watch Transformers 2? The one with the racist robots. And I'm like, what? That's a weird quirk to give her. And then she starts looking at the Deep all, like, with the eyes, and he's like, oh, I thought you were a bitch, but you're actually pretty cool. And then they have a kind of gross makeout session. He's cheating on his octopus, right? Which we hear, yeah, that's Tilda Swinton, I think, voicing the octopus, which was an interesting revelation. And I actually was really confused during this scene. I was kind of thinking, does this put into question everything I've like maybe theorized about her and like working against Homeland or whatever? I mean, being attracted to the Deep and doing this feels like a bit of a weird swerve. So the idea that she's only doing this, and I actually think this is quite funny, that she's only attracted to the Deep potentially when she's had a lobotomy and is much, 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 much dumber than she normally is. If that's the case, if she's only attracted to him when she's had a lobotomy, I cannot wait for her to tell the Deep that. Or for the Deep to somehow find that out. I think that has hilarious potential, and I'm all for it. So we'll see where they go with that. But the Deep's thinking that he's in cool with her, but because I can see her acting cold the next day when she's smart again, and it might feel like, oh, it's a one night stand and now she's giving him the cold shoulder, but that's not actually what's happening. I think it's quite funny to me. But we'll see what they do with it. Who else do I want to talk about in terms of plot. Kimiko wants to go after Ring of Light, Wheel of Light. Is that what whatever the group is that smuggle the kids that she was previously a victim of? And that's where her and Frenchie go, and she ends up killing a bunch of them in brutal ways. The only real notable thing here, because I wasn't as into this side of things, although Kimiko usually has at least one adorable moment, and her adorable moment in this episode is when she's explaining how she found this this cell of the group. She says that Huey taught her how to look it up in the computer, and she goes, "I'm a hacker now," and does a little keyboard motion. That was kind of adorable, but. The actual scene, the violence was fun enough, but the real main things to discuss is that she recognizes one of the women there at the end. I presume someone who was a victim with her, probably the same girl we saw in the little flashbacks last episode, and someone she maybe sees as a sister or a close friend who obviously has now been completely brainwashed by these villains, so that's something we can maybe delve into with her. Gives her someone to save. And she's also concerned about Frenchie and the fact that he's relapsing. Like I said, I'm not as into that stuff right now. We'll see if it progresses. The other thing, though, to talk about is kind of the main plot, and that kind of spins out of the fact that MM wants to turn A-Train. He wants to turn A-Train into an actual ally, someone who they can count on for intel, and so on and so forth. They're not thrilled with the idea, even though A-Train did kind of step up last episode. But MM tricks A-Train to come and see him by pretending to be his brother on the phone, and then via text. He doesn't fake a voice or that would have been funny though, having A-Train try to do his brother's voice. That may have been quite amusing. But no, he just sort of sends a text as if it's from his brother. And A-Train's not thrilled about it. MM says, "Look, I've got footage of you handing over the footage from last episode. We have a camera in the office. I don't think I need to blackmail you though, because you've got bags under your eyes, you're clearly not sleeping well, you're guilty about something." And he's hitting things that we know are cause. A-Train tells him to piss off initially, but next time we see MM, he's with Huey and he's annoyed that no one else has shown up, but they're at Vought on Ice, the rehearsals on the ice rink for the Vought musical ice skating extravaganza for Christmas. Yeah, we see a little bit of the performance. It's amusing for what it is, right? There's the weird, right-wing messaging mixed in about Christmas and happy holidays and whatever else. Huey is tasked with going into the vents and planting a bug so they can capture a conversation between Newman and Homelander. Sage also ends up being there, but Huey doesn't have time to plant the bug, so he just has to kind of hang around and listen to the conversation. But eventually, of course, at the end of the scene, his sweat drips down, and then Homelander can smell him. So we get this glorious scene where Homelander's firing his heat vision into the vents and missing Huey. MM eventually gets to the lights to try and save Huey. And when this happens, he shines the light in Homelander's face just as he's about to fire his lasers, and he ends up turning his head and lasering the ice skater who's playing Maeve in the musical in half, which makes all the actors panic, and then someone skates over someone's fingers, someone slices someone's neck as they whip their leg over the barister to get out of the ice rink. It's wonderful. This is a sort of silly gore and violence that I'm always down for in the boys. And the big thing is that Huey shouldn't be able to get away. He gets to the roof, but of course Homelander's going to get to him. How wouldn't he? But when Homelander gets to the roof, he's not there, and then it's revealed how Huey's escaped. A-Train grabbed him and ran him to somewhere else in the city. A-Train saved him, to which Huey just says, "Why did you do that?" And A-Train doesn't answer, he just runs away. But clearly this alliance has potential, and this is, again, A-Train's the one that might actually feel remorse for all the things that he's done, and this is maybe some of the steps to get to that. And I feel like with A-Train, they teased this last season, and he ended up just telling Homelander, and it got the guy killed, and there was a whole thing last time. I feel like they have to commit to it this time, and potentially A-Train might die before the end of the show. He might get caught and have a big moment, but it would be a fulfilling end to his character if he accepts that fate and is sort of still proud of what he managed to do to help people stop Homelander, potentially. I'm not saying that has to happen that way, but I could see that being the case where, because in this episode, he even says to MM, "Yeah, well, helping you guys and not Homelander gets people killed and he thinks he's going to die, but MM's like, you're still standing. No, I feel like him not being scared of the repercussions of doing the right thing is the natural end story for his character. Whether that means he dies heroically or he's still alive and like gains his brother's trust back or respect back or whatever. You know, like there's potential there, but fun stuff. Obviously, I glossed over the conversation that Homelander and Newman have. They basically lay out what they want her to do when she's in the White House. They want her to abolish all these anti-soup laws. They want a soup in every town who has authority over the police. And they want her to out herself and come out of the closet as a super, which Newman does not want. The conversation obviously comes to an abrupt end when the Huey sweat drips down. But also, basically, they talk about the fact that Firecracker's there to take down Starlight and ruin her, and Huey hears all that, so obviously that's something that he's going to care about and pass on, potentially. All this stuff was fun, though. It's like, I feel like the show does a really good job of balancing these big, outrageous, like, spectacle, violent moments and scenes with the more good character stuff. The only real weak link here is the one or two character plots aren't as compelling as the rest of them, right? I think, you know, Huey does better this episode. I think Frenchie's the one in this episode that I wasn't really feeling, but it wasn't to such a degree that it hurt the episode that much, but it does take up maybe, I don't know, a fifth of the episode's runtime, maybe a little less than that. So it just halts the pacing a little bit. And if I didn't mention that Ashley was going to quit, but changes her mind after the woman got her face melted by Homelander because she's just scared of the repercussions, then that happened too. I'll just mention that. I don't know if I actually did make that clear. Okay, I think that's most of everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I'm loving what they're doing with most of the characters and most of the progressions, and I think the way that some of the themes, you know, I always compare Homelander and Butcher, so the idea that I was comparing a little bit of Homelander and Ryan to Starlight's mom and her, I think is another cool little interesting link. I always talk about seeing characters interact that don't usually interact is kind of interesting, especially when it's like in an endearing way. It wasn't endearing this time, but I did think MM and A-Train sharing a scene together and having MM kind of trying to appeal to him and like call out the bullshit like white savior movie that he's making right now and just try and reach out to him in a real human way was really good. I guess in a kind of a similar way to Billy Butcher also just opening up to Ryan and sort of like being honest. As much as he was not being emotional doing it because it was a very different context, it did feel like MM was laying out the truth. He was saying what he really thinks and he's trying to win A-Train over with honesty. A bit more threatening in tone, but still that's the vibe. Like it's more, you know, not manipulation, but he's trying to influence A-Train. He's trying to convince him of something. But what he happens to be convincing him of is a better thing. It's a good thing, at least certainly from his perspective. He believes he's doing the right thing, so there's nothing malicious about it. So, yeah, it's the show's good. Obviously, it has completely nuked my recording schedule for this like past week because they gave me 3 episodes. All the classic shows I was meant to review did not happen. Combined with a busy weekend where I had no time to get anything done, it's just been the boys spread out over several days. But obviously, tomorrow, episode 4 hits. I don't know if the review will be out tomorrow or if it'll have to wait till Friday, but obviously it's just the one this time, so either way, it shouldn't be too long, and then we're just, you know, going weekly from here. So if you do watch my other reviews and you're annoyed that all the other things kind of took a bit of time off, they'll be back in short notice, don't worry. But yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 3 of The Boys. Thank you very much for joining me. Do comment about your thoughts on this episode and anything I didn't talk about down below, because these episodes are very dense. There's a lot of stuff packed in. I'm sure there's little funny moments that I forgot to mention and whatnot. Oh, I didn't even really mention the Huey and his mum scene. I mentioned that it happened, but I didn't really talk about what was in it. She admits that she tried to kill herself right before she left him, and that's kind of what inspired her to leave her life, kind of thing. And again, it was her being open and honest about it, and maybe Huey sees her more as a person now. I don't really have anything else to add other than that, but that was the gist of the scene. I guess I just kind of glossed over it because, yeah, I'm not as interested in that plot right now. Obviously, it fits into the themes of being open and forgiving and all the other things that are going on in the season, which is good writing. It's nice that everything is thematically linking. It's just not every single plot thread is as engaging as the other. So that is my thoughts, though. Thank you very much for joining me. You can, of course, support the content and help keep it all coming by supporting over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and getting bonuses, or via YouTube memberships if that's more your thing. Any support is greatly appreciated. I wouldn't be able to do this on a regular schedule like I do between this channel and the movie channel if it wasn't for the support. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube things. They help out a bunch too. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?